The murder of Rachel Winkler by her husband Todd Winkler shocked the nation and exposed the dark undercurrents of a seemingly perfect marriage. This case delves into the events leading to Rachel's death, the trial that followed, and the enduring lessons about control, violence, and justice.
Rachel Winkler, a talented artist and mother of three, lived with her husband Todd Winkler in Cameron Park, California. Their outwardly idyllic marriage concealed years of growing tension, emotional neglect, and allegations of abuse. On February 27, 2012, this facade shattered when Rachel was found murdered in their home. Todd Winkler called 911, reporting that Rachel was dead inside their house. When police arrived, Todd was on the front steps, claiming Rachel had attacked him with scissors during an argument. He alleged that he acted in self-defense, seizing the scissors and fatally stabbing her in the neck. The crime scene painted a different picture. Rachel's body lay in a pool of blood with clear signs of a struggle. Forensic evidence contradicted Todd's claim of self-defense, suggesting an act of calculated violence rather than an impulsive reaction. Rachel's family described her as a vibrant and loving woman who had grown increasingly unhappy in her marriage. By 2011, she had confided in friends about feeling neglected and emotionally abandoned by Todd. Her affair with James White, a local contractor, underscored her yearning for companionship and respect. The day before her murder, Rachel told James that she planned to leave Todd. This revelation became a crucial piece of the prosecution's case, as it established Todd's motive: fear of losing control and the financial fallout of a divorce. Neighbors recalled frequent arguments between Todd and Rachel, further painting a picture of a tumultuous relationship. Despite Todd's claims of innocence, his behavior in the days following the murder raised red flags. The investigation revealed Todd's history of erratic and troubling behavior. He had served as an F-16 fighter pilot in Japan, where he became obsessed with samurai culture. This fascination manifested in bizarre and violent outbursts, including one in court where he screamed, "You are not samurai," during opening statements. Rachel's murder was not Todd's first brush with tragedy. In 1999, his first wife, Catherine Winkler, died in a suspicious car crash in Georgia. Todd claimed that Catherine lost control of their truck while driving him to the hospital for an allergic reaction. Investigators ruled the crash an accident, though lingering doubts persisted. As the investigation unfolded, the evidence against Todd mounted. Photographs of his minor injuries from the alleged kill or be killed struggle failed to support his claims. Prosecutors argued that Todd's actions were premeditated, driven by his desire to avoid a costly divorce and maintain control. Rachel's father, Don Hatfield, a renowned artist, mourned the loss of his daughter while seeking justice. His paintings of Rachel, once a muse and a source of inspiration, became a poignant reminder of her life and legacy. Todd Winkler's trial began on September 23, 2014, drawing national attention. Prosecutors described him as a manipulative and violent man who viewed Rachel's independence as a threat to his control. They argued that he killed her to prevent her from leaving him. The defense painted a vastly different picture, claiming that Todd acted in self-defense during a life-threatening altercation. They highlighted his history of mental health issues, including PTSD from his time in the Air Force, to explain his erratic behavior. During the trial, Todd's bizarre courtroom outbursts shocked the jury. His erratic behavior included shouting in a foreign accent and accusing the prosecutor of dishonesty. These antics, coupled with the overwhelming evidence, undermined his credibility. Prosecutors presented key evidence, including Rachel's plans to leave Todd, the scissors used in the murder, and forensic analysis that contradicted Todd's account of the struggle. Witnesses described Rachel's growing fear of Todd and her determination to start a new life. The trial also revisited the death of Todd's first wife, Catherine. While her death was ruled accidental, prosecutors used the circumstances to demonstrate a pattern of suspicious behavior. They argued that Todd's history of avoiding accountability showed a calculated mindset. After 12 days of testimony, the jury found Todd Winkler guilty of first-degree murder on October 22, 2014. Rachel's family expressed relief and gratitude for the verdict, which brought a measure of closure to their painful journey. Todd was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge described his actions as cruel and deliberate, emphasizing the devastating impact on Rachel's children and loved ones. The Winkler case became a cautionary tale about the dangers of control, emotional manipulation, and unresolved mental health issues. It also highlighted the importance of supporting individuals in abusive relationships and recognizing the warning signs of escalating violence. Rachel's memory lives on through her family and Doan Hatfield's artwork. Her tragic story continues to inspire conversations about domestic violence prevention and the pursuit of justice for victims.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into the tragic case of Rachel Winkler.
Yeah, this one's,
You guys
it's a tough one.
sent us a ton of material on this one.
Absolutely.
News articles, court documents,
Yeah,
even some forum
a
discussion.
lot of foreign discussion.
Yeah, looks like this case really captured people's attention.
Yes, and for good reason.
Yeah.
It's a story that really has it all.
Mm.
You know, seemingly perfect family,
Right?
shocking murder,
Right.
and just this web of secrets and lies
Yeah.
that took years to unravel.
So let's just start with the basics.
Sure.
Rachel Winkler
Yep.
was found dead in her home
Yes.
in Cameron Park, California,
Mm-hmm.
back in 2012.
That's right.
Her husband, Todd,
Mm-hmm.
immediately claimed self-defense,
Immediately.
saying she attacked him with scissors.
Scissors? Yeah.
But as the investigation unfolded, that story began to fall apart.
It unraveled quickly.
Yeah.
What seemed like a pretty open and shut case
Mm-hmm.
quickly turned into this puzzle
Right.
with a bunch of missing pieces.
Yeah.
The forensic evidence didn't line up with Todd's account.
Right.
There were questions about his past,
Mm.
including the death of his first wife.
Right.
And then there's the whole samurai obsession thing.
Okay, so let's back up a bit
Yeah.
before we get into the twists and turns
Sure.
of the investigation.
Yep.
Paint us a picture of Rachel's life
Okay.
before all this happened.
So from the outside looking in,
Mm-hmm.
Rachel really had it all.
Right.
She was a talented artist, a devoted mother to her 3 children,
Right.
and they lived in a beautiful home.
Yeah.
But just beneath the surface, there were these cracks in her marriage.
Right.
She confided in some friends about feeling emotionally neglected by Todd.
And this wasn't just a case of like he works too much or they've grown apart, right?
No, not at all.
This was something deeper.
Much deeper.
A fundamental incompatibility.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's interesting to consider the societal pressures at play here. Rachel was a creative soul, an artist.
Right.
She likely craved a certain level of emotional depth and validation that Todd, perhaps focused on his career and more practical matters, wasn't really equipped to provide.
Right.
The emotional neglect she felt wasn't just a lack of attention, it was a lack of understanding, a mismatch in the way they experienced and expressed their emotions.
Well, it's almost like she was missing a part of herself in that relationship.
100%.
And this eventually led her to have a affair with James White.
That's right.
A local contractor.
Yeah. And while some people might just see the affair as a simple betrayal, I think it's much more nuanced than that.
Yeah.
For Rachel, it wasn't just about romance. It was about finding that missing piece, seeking out the validation and emotional connection she craved.
It's tragic, really.
It is.
She was just trying to fill a void, a need that wasn't being met in her marriage.
It happens.
And this affair would later become a key piece of the puzzle.
Absolutely.
Because just one day before her death, Rachel told James that she was planning to leave Todd.
This is where the motive starts to come into focus. Todd, facing the prospect of losing his wife, his family, and potentially his financial security, suddenly had a lot to lose.
And remember, Todd had a history of troubling behavior. There was the incident in court years later where he shouted about samurai. And then there's the shadow of his first wife's death, Catherine, which was ruled an accident at the time.
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Before we dive into Todd's past, let's focus on the day of the murder. So this seemingly open and shut case took a turn when investigators started looking into the details. Todd's 911 call painted a picture of a desperate struggle of a man fighting for his life against his scissor-wielding wife. But the crime scene told a different story.
So what didn't add up?
Well,
what were the red flags?
For starters, the forensic evidence didn't match up with his claims. While there were signs of a struggle, the extent of Rachel's injuries didn't really support Todd's story of this frantic life-or-death battle.
Hold on. Wouldn't the defense argue?
Sure.
That even minor injuries can be traumatic?
Of course.
In a life-or-death struggle? Maybe he just got lucky.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what the defense would later argue. But remember, the prosecution had a whole team of experts analyzing the evidence. They weren't just looking at the severity of the wounds, they were looking at the angles. The force required, the blood spatter patterns. All of it just pointed to a more deliberate and violent attack than what Todd had described.
I see. So it wasn't just the physical evidence that was raising doubt.
It was a lot more than that.
There were inconsistencies in Todd's own account of what happened.
His story kept changing. Little details didn't add up. And when you combine those inconsistencies with the forensic evidence and Rachel's recently revealed plans to leave him, it creates a very different picture than the one Todd initially presented.
So now the investigation starts to shift. It's no longer just about determining the sequence of events. It's about understanding Todd Winkler. His motives, his past, his psychological state.
And that's where things get really interesting. Because to understand what happened that night, you have to go back, way back to another tragedy that cast a long shadow over this case. The death of Todd's first wife, Catherine.
All right, let's unpack that.
Okay.
Tell us about Catherine Winkler.
All right.
And the circumstances surrounding her death.
Catherine Winkler died in 1999, years before Todd met Rachel. She was killed in a car crash in Georgia, and at the time it was ruled an accident. Todd claimed she lost control of their truck while driving him to the hospital.
But wasn't there always a cloud of suspicion hanging over that incident?
There were whispers, rumors. Some people in Catherine's family never fully believed it was an accident. But without any concrete evidence, the case remained closed until now.
So the investigation into Rachel's death breathed new life.
New life, exactly.
Into the doubts surrounding Catherine's death.
That's right.
So the prosecution starts to look at Todd's past with fresh eyes.
Fresh eyes.
They see a pattern emerging.
Yeah.
2 suspicious deaths.
Right.
Both involving women close to Todd. Both with unanswered questions.
And I imagine this raises a whole host of legal and ethical questions.
Absolutely.
Can they really use a previous case?
Right.
Especially one that was ruled an accident.
Right.
To build their case against Todd.
Right.
In Rachel's murder.
Yeah.
It's a tricky situation.
Yeah.
While they couldn't reopen the investigation into Catherine's death,
Right.
they could use it to establish a pattern of behavior.
Okay.
To suggest that Todd had this history of escaping accountability.
So they're essentially saying,
pretty much,
if he could get away with it once,
yeah,
why not twice?
It's a risky strategy,
right,
but it seems to have been effective by bringing up Catherine's death. The prosecution planted seeds of doubt in the jurors' minds.
Right.
They made it harder for the defense to portray Todd as this grieving husband who had simply acted in self-defense.
This is where the line between due process and seeking justice gets blurry.
Absolutely.
How do you balance the need to present all relevant evidence with the risk of unfairly prejudicing the jury against the defendant?
It's a question that legal scholars have been grappling with for centuries.
Right.
In this case, the judge ultimately allowed the prosecution to introduce evidence related to Catherine's death.
Yeah.
But it was a decision that was not taken lightly.
It's a tough call.
It is.
On the one hand, you don't want to deprive the jury of potentially crucial information.
Of course.
But on the other hand, you don't want to convict someone based on speculation or innuendo.
Right. And that's what makes this case so compelling.
Right.
It forces us to confront these difficult questions, these gray areas where the law and morality intersect.
So we've got this complex web of evidence, conflicting narratives, and a defendant with a penchant for samurai theatrics.
Oh, yeah.
How did all this play out during the trial itself? What were some of the key moments that swayed the jury?
Aside from Todd's dramatic outbursts, the prosecution presented a mountain of evidence that contradicted his self-defense claim. They brought forth Rachel's plans to leave, her fears of Todd, and the expert testimony that debunked his version of the struggle.
And what about the defense?
Well, they focused on Todd's mental state, arguing that his PTSD and samurai obsession had warped his perception of reality, leading him to believe that he was truly in danger when Rachel allegedly attacked him. They also tried to portray Rachel as the aggressor, suggesting that she had a history of volatile behavior and that Todd was simply defending himself.
So it became a battle of credibility.
Exactly. A question of who the jury believed more.
100%.
The seemingly stable and successful businessman.
or the troubled veteran struggling with his demons.
And ultimately, it seems the jury sided with the prosecution. They found Todd Winkler guilty of first-degree murder.
Wow.
The judge, in his sentencing remarks, called Todd's actions cruel and deliberate, emphasizing the devastating impact on Rachel's children and loved ones.
It's hard to imagine the emotional toll this must have taken.
It is.
On everyone involved.
Right.
Rachel's family, her friends.
Her friends.
Even the jurors who had to sit through weeks of graphic testimony and emotional arguments.
What was the reaction to the verdict?
Yeah, what was the reaction?
There was a sense of relief, of justice being served, but it was also a bittersweet victory. Rachel's death was a tragedy that could never be undone.
Of course.
And her children were left to grapple
with the loss of their mother and the horrific circumstances surrounding her death.
It's a stark reminder.
It is.
That even in the face of justice, there are no true winners.
No.
In a case like this, everyone loses something.
Everyone.
But maybe, just maybe, Rachel's story
I hope so.
Can serve as a warning. A lesson about the dangers of unchecked control. And the importance of recognizing the signs of abuse before it's too late.
That's a powerful sentiment. And it brings us to the heart of this deep dive. We've explored the evidence, the trial, the complexities of the case. But what does it all mean? Why should this story, this tragedy, matter to those who never knew Rachel Winkler?
That's a great question.
It is.
And I think it's one that we'll explore in more detail in part 2.
Absolutely.
We'll delve into the broader implications of this case.
Yeah.
The lessons we can learn and the actions we can take to prevent future tragedies like this from happening.
That's what we need to do.
Yeah.
We have to learn from this.
Absolutely.
So the courtroom became a battleground, not just of evidence, but of perception.
Yeah. How Todd presented himself became as crucial as the facts themselves.
100%.
So let's talk about Todd.
Okay.
We've hinted at this samurai obsession.
Right.
It seems like something out of a movie.
It really does.
What's the story there?
Well, Todd's fascination with samurai culture stemmed from his time as an F-16 pilot stationed in Japan. He became enamored with their code of honor, their discipline, their swordsmanship.
Sounds harmless enough.
Yeah.
Plenty of people have hobbies, right?
Sure.
What made this different?
Well, it wasn't just a hobby for Todd.
It
was an obsession. He immersed himself in samurai history, literature, martial arts. He even had a collection of samurai swords displayed very prominently in his home.
And I remember reading about some unsettling incidents, even before Rachel's death, where this obsession manifested in some pretty bizarre ways.
There were reports of Todd dressing up in full samurai attire, engaging in mock sword fights.
Wow.
Witnesses described him shouting in Japanese, making threats. His behavior was becoming increasingly erratic, unpredictable.
It almost sounds like he was losing touch with reality. Blurring the lines between his fascination with samurai culture and his own life.
That's a key point.
Yeah.
And this disconnect, this blurring of reality became a central theme in the trial. The prosecution argued that Todd's obsession with samurai was more than just a quirk. It was a symptom of a deeper psychological disturbance.
So how did this samurai obsession play out in the courtroom? Didn't he have that outburst during the trial?
Yes, he did. And it was a very pivotal moment. During cross-examination, Todd became agitated and started yelling at the prosecutor in this really thick, almost theatrical Japanese accent, shouting, "You are not samurai."
Wow. I can only imagine how that played with the jury.
Yeah.
It seems like that would hurt his defense more than help it.
Well, it's funny you say that because it's sort of a double-edged sword. On the one hand, that outburst could be seen as evidence of Todd's mental instability, which was a key part of their defense strategy. They argued that he suffered from PTSD stemming from his military service and that his erratic behavior was a manifestation of his trauma.
So they're trying to use his outburst, his samurai obsession, to create this image of a troubled veteran struggling with his demons.
Yeah, they're saying, look, this man is clearly not in his right mind. He's not capable of this cold, calculated murder that the prosecution is alleging.
But on the other hand, as you pointed out, that outburst made him look unpredictable. Dangerous, even. It probably alienated some jurors and made it harder for them to sympathize with him.
Absolutely.
It's such a fascinating psychological element to this case.
It is.
You have this clash of narratives. The prosecution portraying Todd as a manipulative.
And controlling husband. The defense painting him as this troubled veteran struggling with mental illness.
And in the middle of it all is this larger-than-life samurai persona that Todd has created for himself, a persona that both fascinates and repulses.
It's really strange.
It makes you wonder how much of it is an act, a way to deflect blame, and how much of it
is a genuine reflection of his inner turmoil. Absolutely. And then there's the shadow of Catherine Winkler's death hanging over everything.
How did the prosecution use that in their case?
Well, they argued that it established a pattern of suspicious behavior. While they couldn't directly link Todd to Catherine's death, they presented evidence suggesting that he benefited financially from her passing. They also pointed out that there were inconsistencies in his account of the car crash, just like there were inconsistencies in his account of Rachel's death.
So they're essentially saying, if he could get away with it once,
pretty much,
why not twice?
It's a risky strategy. But it seems to have been effective. By bringing up Catherine's death. The prosecution planted those seeds of doubt in the jurors' minds. Yeah. It made it a lot harder for the defense to portray Todd as this grieving husband who had simply acted in self-defense.
This is where the line between due process and seeking justice gets blurry.
It's tricky.
How do you balance the need to present all relevant evidence with the risk of unfairly prejudicing the jury against the defendant?
It's a question that legal scholars have been grappling with for a long time. In this case, the judge ultimately allowed the prosecution to introduce evidence related to Catherine's death.
Right.
But again, it was not a decision that was taken lightly.
It's a tough call.
Very tough call.
On one hand, you don't want to deprive the jury of potentially crucial information.
Of course.
But on the other hand, you don't want to convict someone based on speculation or innuendo.
No, and that's what makes this case so compelling.
Right.
It forces us to confront these really difficult questions, these gray areas where the law and morality intersect.
So we've got this complex web of evidence, conflicting narratives, and a defendant with a penchant for samurai theatrics.
Oh, yeah.
How did all of this play out during the trial itself?
Aside from Todd's dramatic outbursts, the prosecution presented a mountain of evidence that contradicted his self-defense claim. They brought forth Rachel's plans to leave, her fears of Todd, and the expert testimony that debunked his version of the struggle.
Okay, and what about the defense?
Well, they focused on Todd's mental state.
Okay.
Arguing that his PTSD and samurai obsession had really warped his perception of reality, leading him to believe that he was in danger when Rachel allegedly attacked him.
Right. They also tried to portray Rachel as the aggressor.
Yes.
Suggesting she had a history of volatile behavior.
Right.
That Todd was simply defending himself.
Exactly.
So it became a battle of credibility.
Yes.
A question of who the jury believed more.
Right.
This seemingly stable and successful businessman.
Yeah.
Or the troubled veteran struggling with his demons.
And ultimately, it seems the jury sided with the prosecution. They found Todd Winkler guilty of first-degree murder.
Why?
The judge, in his sentencing remarks, called Todd's actions cruel and deliberate, emphasizing the impact this had on Rachel's children and loved ones.
It's hard to imagine.
Yeah.
The emotional toll this must have taken on everyone involved.
It is.
Rachel's family, her friends, even the jurors who had to sit through weeks of graphic testimony.
Absolutely.
An emotional argument.
Yeah. What was the reaction to the verdict?
Yeah, what was the reaction?
There was a sense of relief, of justice being served.
Right, but also bittersweet.
Yes, very much so.
Because Rachel's death is a tragedy that can never be undone.
Never.
And her children are left to grapple with the loss of their mother, the horrific circumstances surrounding her death.
It's a stark reminder that even in the face of justice, there are no true winners in a case like this.
Right. Everyone loses something.
Everyone.
But maybe, just maybe, Rachel's story can serve as a warning.
It has to.
The lesson about the dangers of unchecked control.
Right.
And the importance of recognizing the signs of abuse before it's too late.
That's a powerful sentiment.
It is.
And it brings us to the heart of this deep dive.
Yeah.
We've explored the evidence, the trial, the complexities of the case.
Yeah.
But what does it all mean?
Right.
Why should this story, this tragedy, matter to those who never knew Rachel Winkler?
That's a great question, and I think it's one that we'll explore in part 3.
Yeah. I think we should.
We'll delve into the broader implications of this case.
Right.
The lessons we can learn and the actions we can take to prevent future tragedies like this from happening.
Absolutely. That's what we need to do.
Yeah, we have to learn from this. So we've gone pretty deep into the specifics of the Rachel Winkler case.
Right.
The evidence, the trial, the twists and turns.
All of it.
But like you said,
yeah,
there's a bigger conversation here.
I think so.
Why should this case matter to our listener?
I think it's a question we should all ask ourselves.
Right.
With any true crime story that really captivates us. This isn't just entertainment.
Right.
Rachel's case, while unique in its details, really shines a light on this dark reality of domestic abuse.
Yeah, it's a problem that affects
right.
countless individuals and families.
So many.
Often hidden behind closed doors.
That's the hardest part.
And, you know, going through all this material, one thing that struck me was how easily the warning signs were dismissed or overlooked, the emotional neglect, the controlling behavior, those volatile arguments, looking back. These were all red flags.
Yeah, it's easy to play armchair detective after the fact.
Right.
But the truth is, recognizing abuse in real time can be very challenging.
Yeah.
It often starts subtly with emotional manipulation that can be really hard to pinpoint. The victim might not even realize they're being abused. And those around them might just see it as a rocky relationship.
So what can we learn from this?
Wow.
If we can't always prevent these tragedies, how do we at least become more aware, more sensitive to the signs?
Awareness is key.
Okay.
We need to educate ourselves about the different forms of abuse.
Yeah.
It's not always physical. It can be emotional, financial, psychological. Learning to recognize those subtle signs of control and manipulation. I think that's really crucial.
So if someone listening to this right now is thinking, wait a minute. Some of this sounds familiar. What can they do?
Well, first, trust your gut.
Okay.
If something feels wrong in a relationship, it probably is. There are resources available, hotlines, shelters, support groups. Reaching out to a trusted friend, family member, or professional can make all the difference.
And for those of us on the outside, what can we do? It's easy to feel helpless.
Helplessness is a natural response. But it shouldn't paralyze us. Sometimes just being a supportive presence can be impactful. Listen without judgment. Offer help without pushing. And believe survivors when they share their experiences.
It's about creating a culture where victims feel safe coming forward. Knowing they'll be believed and supported.
That's the most important thing.
We have to remember that abuse thrives in silence.
That's right.
And let's not forget about the lasting impact of these tragedies. Rachel's children are now living with the trauma.
It's awful.
Of losing their mother in such a horrific way. Their lives are forever changed.
100%.
And that's something that really stayed with me. Throughout this deep dive. We can focus on the legal case. The evidence, the verdict. But behind it all, there are real people whose lives have been shattered.
And there are so many cases like this.
It's a sobering reminder.
It is.
That domestic violence isn't just a private matter.
No, it's not.
It ripples outward. Affecting families, communities, and society as a whole.
Absolutely. We need to address it as a collective problem, not an individual one.
So where do we go from here?
Wow.
How do we channel this awareness into action? It feels like such a massive issue. It's hard to know where to even begin.
You're right. It can feel overwhelming. But every step, no matter how small, makes a difference. Supporting organizations that work with survivors. Educating ourselves and others. Advocating for policy changes. These are all ways to contribute to the solution.
Rachel's story might be over. But our responsibility to learn from it, to act on it, has just begun.
We have to learn from this.
It's about turning this tragedy into a catalyst for change.
Exactly. Let this case be a reminder that even in the darkest of situations, hope and the pursuit of justice can prevail.
That's powerful.
And let it inspire us all to work towards a future where violence against women is no longer tolerated, no longer accepted, no longer a part of our reality.
Well said.
Thank you.
That's a really powerful message to end on. We've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
Delved into some heavy stuff.
Very heavy.
But let's not leave this conversation
feeling
overwhelmed or hopeless.
No, not at all.
Instead, let's turn that awareness into action.
Absolutely.
Support the cause.
Yes.
Be an advocate.
Be a voice.
Be a voice for those who can no longer speak for themselves.
That's right.
Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
Thank you for having me.
It's been heavy, but essential.
It has been.
Stay informed.
Stay engaged.
Stay engaged. And until next time.
Yes.
Keep asking the tough questions.